What's up, you guys? Matt with MattBuilds coming at you with another video. We're back working on the Toro today. I just put out a video a few weeks ago talking about just kind of giving an update of what I'd done to the Toro, the Zero Turn. And I had some people asking about me explaining on the wiring and that sort of thing, what I did. Well, I had a battery die on me and an ignition switch die on me pretty much all in the same time. So I said, you know what, this is just a good time. I'm cutting all the wiring out. We're going back with just the basics, what it needs to run and what it needs to cut off. I went to Lowe's and picked up just a universal ignition switch. So we're going to be doing some modifications to our ignition switch, putting this universal ignition switch in, and then rewiring it up. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Here's what's left of our ignition switch. Yeah, everything came apart. So I picked up this ignition switch right here. If you want to get the part number off of it, you can. But this is basically it right here. Now the problem that I'm having right now is this kind of snaps into the dash. So what we're going to do is we got a drill. We got some drill bits. We're about to make it fit. Okay, we got the center board out. I believe we're going to be good now. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this feed up through the center. The problem is it won't go. So time to do a little trimming. All right, guys. I did have to kind of trim down that edge, and it's not perfect, but I mean, I'm good with it. So as you can see, she's pretty much stripped. We have a few wires that we're going to be hooking back up, but it's going to have about a third of the wiring that it originally did. Okay, so we're going to get into this ignition switch, and the Toro key actually still works. That's great. Looks like it was supposed to be like that. So we're going to go through real quick and just show what each one of these are for. So the G right here is going to be a ground. We're going to hook a ground to the ignition switch from the battery or the frame or wherever you want to run a ground to. It just needs to be a good ground. In my last video, I mentioned that I didn't have a ground plug on that last ignition switch, so I wasn't able to utilize that ground wire to ground the coil out to kill it. So I was pretty much killing the fuel to it, and that's how I was shutting it off. We'll be able to utilize that now. The B is for battery. So your power from your battery is going to run to here. I recommend running that through a fuse just to make sure everything, stays safe and don't burn up. Working on around, the M is for magneto. That is where that coil wire is going to hook to kill the motor. The S, that's for starter. So that's where your starter wire is going to go. This wire is going to plug in here, and it's going to go down to your starter solenoid. And then your L would be your lights or accessories, that sort of thing. So this wire right here is what's going to run our PTO and our fuel pump, our fuel shutoff solenoid. So I want to kind of show what I'm doing. So this is the plug that plugs into the back of the ignition switch. A lot of people would just run female connectors on it. But as you guys tell, I like to keep somewhat factory. So we're going to utilize this plug, but all of my wires were in the wrong location. So if you take a flathead screwdriver and stick it right down in here, or you can use like a little dental pick or anything like that, stick it down in here, you'll see this tab. You can actually push that tab down and pull that connector out of the plug. So we're going to pull that connector out. Now you want to make sure that before you put it back in, you do kind of bend it up a little bit for it to catch. But we're actually going to relocate all of these plugs, all these connectors in this plug so that they line up, and we can use this factory plug-in with the wires in the correct location that we need them. All right, you guys. So I went through and I changed all the plugs on the back of the ignition switch. So let's see if I can zoom in here, get it to focus. All right, so magneto, that's the wire that is going to the coil. So we have spliced that wire, and it is running up to this harness that runs to the engine. And that white wire it actually turns into a black wire up inside this harness here. And that is the wire that is going to the coils right here to kill the two coils. So one goes to there, one jumps around and comes over to, if I can get, there it is right there, to right there. So that's your magneto wire, or your coil wire that's killing the ignition. This right here is your wire going to your battery. So I have that one hooked up. It is in line with a fuse going to the battery. That is what's providing power to the ignition switch. So this is your G, your ground. So I actually have this one tied in to the grounds that's running the hour meter. I am going to still maintain the hour meter. So those are hooked up. They're kind of splitting off. I got one going over there to the starter relay. The other one is tied in, and it is running around to an engine ground right there. So we are pulling the ground directly off the engine, which also this ground wire right here that I'm pointing at, it runs around, and that is hooked to our battery. So we have our battery wired straight to the engine, and then we actually have two ground wires tapped off of that. One of those is coming up and over to here, which is tied into our hour meter. The other ground wire is going down to our PTO clutch down there at the bottom. Okay, back up here at the ignition switch again. The S right here. So that is our starter wire. That is running to the starter relay. So we have on this starter relay, it's a 4-post. So we have one that's coming off the battery to this side. This wire is going to go over to the starter. This, of course, is the ground we just mentioned. This one is your power wire. So what this does is your green wire is a ground. Your blue wire, this blue wire, yours may be a different color, is coming from the ignition switch. So what will happen is once you send power to this, it will close that coil, which will pull in the starter relay and allow the starter to fire. And focus, there we go. So those wires are going to my PTO for my blades. You got two wires coming up here. Yours may be different colors. One of them is running over to a ground over there on the side of the motor. The other one is going to run up here to your PTO switch. So this pink wire is coming from my ignition switch, and it's jumped off down to down here. I'm actually running this other pink wire. I got it jumped to run to this yellow wire. That wire is running in the factory harness, and it is running around the side and right to here, which is running down to the fuel shutoff on the carburetor. That has two wires. That green wire that's in there also, it's kind of dirty. That green wire is coming right over here to a ground. So we're not messing with that. The only thing we need to do is make sure that this yellow wire right here has power when the ignition is on. And last but not least, back over here on the ignition switch, if I can get it to focus here. So we are on the L, the lights or accessories. So what we have done is I had this pink wire that we saw earlier. It is running down and it is running to the PTO switch. So on this pink side, we'll just call it the pink side of the PTO switch. So we have power coming off of there to the PTO switch. We have a jumper wire jumped over to here. Of course, whenever you pull the PTO switch, it's actually going to send power through this brown wire and back down to the PTO clutch, which I showed you earlier. And then the pink wires jumped off over to this side, and that pink wire is sending, I have it hooked to a T-tap, that's sending power to this side of the hour meter. And then it runs on down, and I have it spliced into the yellow wire, which is running back up here to the engine harness and turning on the fuel pump or the fuel solenoid. So yellow wire, fuel solenoid shut off. The white wire is the coil wire. That's our magneto wire on our switch, or the kill wire. And then these two purple wires. So we're gonna have another video coming up on this. But these two purple wires are actually joined. They come through in this harness going to the engine as two red wires. Now inside of this harness, they split and go to one, or they combine and go to one wire. Those wires run over here and to the voltage regulator right down here. Well, I found out why I needed a new battery. The voltage regulator is not charging. So you'll see some tape on these two right here. So what I had done is I pulled these two wires apart and I checked across these two with my voltmeter, and the stator, which is up here inside of here, the stator is charging. I'm getting plenty of voltage from the stator. However, the voltage regulator right here, it is not doing its job. So on this voltage regulator, you have two yellow wires that are running from the stator down to the voltage regulator. You have a ground wire that's going down to the engine down there. And then the one red wire, which I'm not really sure why it does this, but the one red wire comes up into this harness, and then right here, it splits off right in here about where my finger is. It splits off to two red wires, runs through that plug into these two purple wires. So I have those two purple wires coming up, which they're tapped into the two red wires coming off the voltage regulator right there. These two purple wires are coming up, and I have them just spliced together. This wire is going to land on your battery. This will be your charge wire for your voltage regulator. So as your engine is turning, it will send power down through your two wires right here coming off the stator into the voltage regulator. So the power that's going to be coming in from your stator is going to be AC, but we need DC. So this converts everything from AC power to DC power, and then it feeds it back out through this red wire back to this purple wire that is going to hook to the battery, the positive side of the battery, and that will allow us to charge the battery. So stay tuned for a video coming up on that. It's actually been a couple of days since I recorded that last video, and it dawned on me that I have the old Husqvarna over there. So we have robbed the voltage regulator off the Husqvarna. So now we are putting out 14 volts to the battery. So we are charging. Okay, so quick recap. I got everything tidied up a bit. So starting at the ignition switch, get it to focus here. We got M, magneto. That is the white wire going to the coil pack to kill it. B, that is the red wire right there. It is going to the battery, straight to the battery with an inline fuse in it. G, that is the brown wire right there. That is going to a ground. S, you can see through there, that is going to that blue wire, which is running to the other side of our starter relay, our starter solenoid. And L, if I can get it to focus, L, that is that pink wire that you see right through there, right here. That is the pink wire that is running to our PTO, which is then jumped off to this pink wire as well, which is running over here to run our hour meter. And it also runs to the engine harness, this yellow wire on the engine harness, to run our fuel pump or our fuel shutoff solenoid. So whenever the engine's running or the mower is on, we're supplying power. So we're going to go through real quick on this one. This is the hour meter right here. These two green wires, both of those are ground wires. One's kind of coming in, one's kind of going out. So I just let those jump together. The brown wire is what is tapped to this pink wire right here. That is sending power. So anytime the ignition switch is on, it's got that hour meter counting. So we're going to go over here back to the PTO. Again, this brown wire right here is going through the harness. It runs around and it's dropping down right here to the PTO clutch. Get this out of the way. I got everything tidied up a bit as I showed you. So those two green wires on the hour meter one of them runs right here to the other side of the starter relay. The other one is running around in that harness and over there to the engine ground right there. The blue wire that is coming off the ignition switch goes to this side of the starter relay. Again, your wires may be different colors, but that starter wire coming off the ignition switch needs to go to this side of the starter relay. So let's see, this red wire right here that is also coming off this battery post, that is running down in through this fuse and back to the ignition switch. That is the supply power for the ignition switch. Get on down in here into these harnesses a little bit. You'll see kind of what's what in these harnesses. So there's the white wire that is the coil wire. There is the brown wire, which is going down to the PTO clutch. We got a ground. Let's see, there's the yellow wire that is running over to the engine harness. These two purple wires are the charging wires that are running up from the voltage regulator. We'll go through the engine harness one more time real quick just to recap everything. So these two purple wires, those are coming from the from the voltage regulator. Those are now going to the battery to charge the battery. This white wire, here's your coil wire again to kill it. And this yellow wire is your fuel shutoff going to the carburetor. All right, guys, I got everything bundled up, tied up. Aside from running out of the black zip ties and having to use a couple white zip ties, almost looks like it was meant to look like this. But that's pretty much it. We're going to run this thing for a while. The Husqvarna is going to be down for a bit. I got to do an engine rebuild on it. So I don't need this voltage regulator on the Husqvarna right now. So we're going to run it on this one. And if it quits, I'll replace it. But until then, we're just going to run it. But I thank each and every one of y'all. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Really helps me out. Get this channel out there and let me continue to bring content to you guys. But thank you for each and every one of y'all still here to the end. And we'll see y'all in the next one.